Tell us a story about what happened today.
You know what parking is like in Chapel Hill. It's the same people all the time. I've talked to them numerous times. I've semi-threatened them. I said, I'm sick and tired of this crap. You're going to keep disrespecting me, I'm going to start disrespecting you. I will.
How'd you...
I pulled my gun and started shooting them.
February 10th, 2015.
The whole world was watching Chapel Hill. In seconds, we knew immediately who killed our children.
Shocking triple murder in the college town of Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Police say a neighbor gunned down 3 Muslim college students.
23-year-old Dia Barakat, the woman he just married in late December. 21-year-old Yusur Abu Salha also killed her sister, 19-year-old Razan.
The victim's family members are questioning whether the shooting was a hate crime.
Who is this man? Someone motivated by hate, or someone so obsessed by parking spaces at his condominium that he shoots to kill?
All rise!
Show me a reason if it's not hate.
No act is singularly motivated. We do a lot of what we do for reasons we are not even aware of ourselves.
The question is, how did our children live? And why did they die? إنه لقول فصل وما هو بالهزل إنهم يكيدون كيدا وأكيد كيدا.
Hi there, I'm walking through the Finley Forest apartment complex in Chapel Hill, and I just heard gunshots. I don't know what building it came from, but I heard kids screaming. Okay.
It was a gray afternoon. Officers arrived and were able to relay on the radio that this is a really serious crime here.
Police tape, yellow tape, sirens, flashing lights, dark nights. Dia's father was just yelling, I want answers, tell me if he's dead. And then I froze. I was just walking around looking at people's eyes. My wife, Amira, was holding her stomach, rocking in her chair and saying, oh God, please, no, God, please, oh God, oh God.
My father called me. He said, Yusuf, why did we learn our faith? Your true testament of faith is how you react during times of hardship. He said, Yusur and Dia are with your Lord now. I said, Baba, who was the 3rd victim of the shooting? And he told me Razan was visiting them for dinner.
I went to an ocean without a bottom, and I kept going down and down and down.
There is a clock that I stopped, took the battery out, and stopped it at 5, 6 p.m. As far as I know, that was the time of the shooting. And for me, that is where the time in my life stopped.
Ready?
Hey! No, go ahead.
Keep it going?
Yeah. Higher.
Today is like our baby was born. We're so happy.
Dia and Yusur, they just were in love. You could see it in their eyes. They were like role models in our community. I was 2 years older than Yusur and 4 years older than Razan. And I used to look up to my sisters, although they were younger than me, because I felt that they were better than me in many ways. Yusur, her name means ease, and she sort of radiated a sense of ease everywhere she went. Yusur got into UNC School of Dentistry, where she was going to join Dia. Razan was just a giver, the artistic one out of us all. I I used to imagine, what are our lives gonna be like? Like, are we gonna one day share a cul-de-sac where our kids are playing around?
Sometimes I feel like it's hard to describe him because he's my brother. He was an unconditional friend.
Take a picture with me.
Dia was very, very smart and very kind, very gentle. Being a mother, it was everything I was.
That sense of happiness just is not possible anymore.
Razan's room. This is the one that she built. It's a light for her first quarter at the design school. It's really pretty and it made colors. Yeah, this is Yusser's wedding dress. She tried many dresses, but when she wore this one, oh my God, she looks like an angel. It's a school picture for them three together. Yusuf used to share everything with Yusr and Razan, and I know that he is now feeling lonely.
Come get ready.
There isn't a textbook outline of how to go through something like this as a family, because things like this are not supposed to happen. Things like this could destroy families. Things like this could destroy communities.
3 Muslim young people murdered in our quaint, progressive college community, and those things were very hard to make sense of. Very early in that investigation, we were hearing from residents who had had encounters over parking with Mr. Hicks.
Chapel Hill police were going door to door talking to neighbors.
He had issues, a lot of issues with people, noise in the neighborhood and parking issues.
Pretty quickly, it became clear to us that that was a source of conflict for him and his neighbors. When there's an unusually troubling event, we want to provide reassurance to the community that we believe it's isolated and that we don't think there's an ongoing threat. Because as you can imagine, by 8:30 or 9 o'clock the next morning, we were getting inquiries literally from all around the world. We put out an initial statement, and it was factual, named the victims, named the suspect, that he had turned himself in, and we were charging him with murder, and that our preliminary investigation suggested this interaction developed out of a dispute over parking.
We arrested Craig Stephen Hicks, 46 years old, of 270 Summerwalk Circle in Chapel Hill. He's been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, and he's in the Durham County Jail right now.
This is not a federal investigation yet.
Pretty quickly, we learned that it didn't have the effect that we had hoped it would have.
Well, right now here on Twitter, you can see the hashtag Muslim Lives Matter just flooding the feeds.
More than 2 million tweets. Many have already judged this as a hate crime.
We've been talking all morning about the rush to call this incredible tragedy an issue over parking.
It's basically incomprehensible to me.
You have a man who openly despised people of all religious faiths.
His Facebook page said he's an ordained atheist minister who enjoys target practice.
His posts cover everything from condemning religion to showing off his revolver, but also supporting equal rights. His wife says there's no way.
I can say with my absolute belief that this incident had nothing to do with religion or victims' faith.
As soon as I heard the words parking dispute on television, I was very disappointed. Dia lived at the apartment complex for a couple of years, and he had several interactions with Craig Hicks. But we believe that those interactions escalated when Yusr, who wore the headscarf, arrived on the scene when she married Dia and moved in.
Craig Hicks, I think the way he was looking at his neighborhood was that it was changing, it was diversifying.
My mom told my sister that she was worried. My father told them, you guys need to go and get a restraining order from the police. And that was their next step. That was what they were working on.
Immediately after the murders, It really wasn't necessarily a time for us to heal. It was a time for us to act.
We ask that the authorities investigate these senseless and heinous murders as a hate crime.
We don't care about punishment. We care about acknowledging this the way it is.
If we classify it as a hate crime and maybe people will start understanding that you know, Islamophobia or hate or ignorance can kill.
Leaders at this mosque are hoping to meet with federal investigators next week to make their case. They say it's important to them to prevent other Muslims from becoming victims of similar crimes.
We really felt like if this murder was classified as a parking dispute, then it's just another example of how aggression, even microaggressions against the Muslim community, will continue to be underreported, will continue to be kind of swept under the rug because we prefer a more romanticized, a more whitewashed version of where we are.
I've seen a lot of cases, as you might imagine, over 35 years of being a judge. And I've certainly heard cases on the state level in North Carolina that qualified as hate crimes. Sometimes it's very clear, and it's a pernicious type of crime.
Texas has executed the white supremacist behind a gruesome hate crime. 3 men chained James Byrd Jr. to the back of a truck in June of 1998, dragging him nearly 3 miles on a rural road near the Louisiana border.
That was a typical hate crime. They did that because he was black. They told everybody they were gonna kill him because he was black. That's the kind of hate crime that occurs in many, many places and what the federal government is trying to protect against.
Arguably the first attempts to create something like a hate crime were anti-lynching statutes. Each time they were filibustered by Southern senators. The first true hate crime legislation was passed at the federal level in 1969. That made it a crime to prevent someone from engaging in some sort of activity on account of race, religion, or ethnicity.
They were designed for the federal government to be able to take a case and prosecute it when a state might not want to.
Hate crimes have special, significant harms. You know, if you burn a cross on the lawn of an African-American's family's home, the harm doesn't just go to that family. The harm resonates throughout the entire African-American community. Convicting the perpetrator of not just a simple assault, but of a hate crime, gives society the chance to sort of stand in solidarity with the victim. States have always been free to define their own hate crimes, but they've only begun to do so relatively recently.
In the case of first-degree murder, North Carolina's sentencing requires an automatic life without parole. And so in that sense, a hate crime doesn't mean that somebody will get more time.
What it will do is give validity to the reason why he did what he did.
The challenges in proving a hate crime are that you have to be able to directly attribute an event to someone's intent.
You have the right to remain silent. If you choose to give up that right,
Absent a direct confession of that, it's a difficult standard to meet.
We have one spot reserved for us, that's where my wife parks. And I have to park somewhere else. I have no place else to park. And it's the same people all the time. I've talked to them numerous times. I've semi-threatened them. And I walked back there and I said, you got 3 cars in the lot. You're not supposed to have more than 2. And I don't have a parking spot. I'm not parking on the street. And he said, we can park wherever, can I say the word?
Sure.
Okay, wherever the fuck we want. We can park as many fucking vehicles as we want.
He said that he came over, he knocked the door, he told my brother that he had taken 3 spots and that somehow that wasn't okay, and that my brother started cussing at him. He said one of the girls berated him as well.
I said, I'm sick and tired of this crap. You're gonna keep disrespecting me, I'm gonna start disrespecting you. He goes, fuck you, you worthless piece of shit, and I went off.
I thought it was possible that my brother and Yusuf were angry. We're trying to get him to stop coming back or stop harassing them. Had it not been for the video, that's what I thought.
There are 3 things in my life that I will never forget. One was the death of my dad, one was the death of my mom, and the other was that video. All your mind does is hear the screams. I've just never heard the desperation, the surprise, but mostly the fear.
So, got 3 cars in the lot. Yeah. I don't have a parking spot. No, I mean, we can have however many parking spots we can have. You're gonna be disrespectful towards me. I'm gonna be disrespectful. You need to get off my property.
You see Greg Hicks standing over my brother's body. Yusuf and Razan were shot with the gun to their hijab at point blank. On the way out, he again stood over my brother. This time he shot him in the mouth.
It's a basic human instinct to try and make some sort of meaning, some sort of sense out of a terrible crime. Anti-Muslim bias was and continues to be a huge problem in our society. But it's also possible he was simply a terribly angry man who allowed his anger to build and build and build, and that he might have killed them irrespective of their religion.
I still see their faces when I killed them, all 3 of them. 6 months prior to this event, something broke in me. I knew I was over the edge, and I knew that temper of mine was ready to come out, and I knew I was not going to be able to control it. Summer Walk Circle was very quiet, it was very organized, but with the recession, a lot of people moved out. The people that are moving in were all college students, and they don't really know how to follow rules all that great. That morning I woke up, I went to school, came home and found their cars didn't have a parking spot, and I decided they were going to be the ones. They were going to move their cars out of the lot or else. It had nothing to do with religion. I don't like religion. I'm not quiet about that, but I didn't kill them because of their religion. Don't blame this crime on a whatever race, agnostic, atheist, blame it on Craig Hicks. I did that crime. People have called me a monster. I'm beyond that in my own mind. I'm well beyond that.
There's the story about fish swimming through water, and this older fish says, how's the water? How's the water? And the other fish are like, what water? And they're not even aware of this environment that they're immersed in because they've been in this environment all their lives. The nation's experience with 9/11, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, those things all become part of the water through which we're all swimming. That's going to create biases that many people won't even really be fully aware of.
Growing up, you always felt a little bit different. Here, you're the Muslim, especially post 9/11. You're synonymous with almost enemy of America. Like, your loyalties are conflicted.
I went to medical school in Iraq, so I survived the Iraqi-Irani war for 3 years. We could hear the sounds from the front line. But we were looking for the America we knew from TV and the news: freedom, democracy, liberty, justice, equality, peace. You can't be in danger if you come to the superpower country. I'm not romantic about anything anymore.
Should Americans fear Islam?
It is Islamic killers who are the central problem on the planet.
There's a fair amount of research showing that we, especially white people, have a tendency to perceive members of other racial and ethnic groups as less human. At the implicit level, he's getting all of this other information that says they're a threat, they're terrorists, they're un-American, they're different. That implicit bias may have been affecting how he was interpreting his interactions all along and maybe in that very final few moments.
This house belonged to my brother. What the house kind of represents is just driving out darkness with light. My brother's name translates from Arabic to English as meaning light, so that's why we called it the lighthouse. And for me, everything that kind of happens out of this house, everything that's positive, any connection that's made, anybody who's fed, every prayer that's made goes back to him. Literally a week before the murders, my mom was telling us, I sensed this like increase in hostility toward Muslims. I was like, what's the worst that can happen?
If a Muslim in America, in his home at 5 p.m. is not safe, there is no place on earth to be safe. America was last hope.
We were able to meet with officials from Department of Justice and FBI, examining the tapes, the computers, the cell phones. They were coming to us with the same answer. Though it looks like a hate crime, we cannot really prove it's a hate crime because he did not declare why he killed them. And we as feds cannot take a case to court that we would lose.
At the federal level, the mere fact that a person who is killed or murdered might be of a different race, that is simply not enough.
If we define every crime where bias makes it easier to commit the crime as a hate crime, then we're going to define hate crimes very, very broadly. The dangers, if you do that, is that some people will be punished differently, not because they actually acted on account of bias, but simply because they've said biased things in the past. The question is, what do you want the law to do?
A man from right here in the Triangle is on Capitol Hill today testifying about white nationalism.
Dr. Abu Saleh.
What happened to our children was a home invasion and execution. 3 beautiful young Americans were brutally murdered, and there's no question in our minds that this tragedy was born of bigotry and hate. And I ask you, I truly plead to you, not to let another American family go through this because our government would not act to protect all Americans.
I've been worried about what arraignment would look like for years now, trying to figure out what exactly it'll be like, if he'll say anything.
This case is very important to a lot of people. The threat was universal, like it could be me. It's gonna reflect the reality of their environment, how safe their environment is.
All rise!
It's hard to say what justice is. Sometimes justice is in the eye of the beholder.
Justice for me would be my child walking back through the door, and they will never have that.
Today is about the narrative that not the murderer, not the aggressor, not the criminal, but the narrative that the victims and the truth stand by.
In 15 CRS 51212, first-degree murder of Dia Shadi Barakat, how does Mr. Hicks plead?
Guilty.
All these years later, I'm more frustrated with our failure to reach the legal standard of a hate crime, because it seems pretty clear that it was as hateful of a crime as you could ever imagine. I think we failed to understand that a significant portion of our community deal with some form of Islamophobia every day. It wasn't a lens through which we were thinking about that statement that day, and I think that was a pretty significant blind spot. If we had it to do it again, we would do it differently.
There will be 3 consecutive sentences of life imprisonment without a possibility of parole. Mr. Sheriff, he's in your custody, sir.
This case is like so many where we have a feeling that there's something more there, that there's bias there. That's a reflection of a broader, big societal problem that we have to deal with.
We won. Yeah, we did. We can rest now that the truth is spoken.
We need to understand where this kind of hatred can take us. The numbers of victims in these particular cases is like throwing the proverbial pedal in the pond and the rings go out and out and out forever. From here on, there'll be much discussion about how the memory of these beautiful people might be served. And legislation might be one of them. We'll see what people are really made of, won't we?
A week before the murders, we all wanted to see how tall we were. So we all stood up against the wall, up against the door frame, and just marked our heights. You have my brother's height, you have my height, you have my dad, my mom, Yusur, my sister. I stand up against the frame because I know my brother stood up against it.
Of course, I'm a different person. I can relate to humans suffering more. I can understand their pain. I'm living now day by day, doing what needs to be done, but I'm waiting a second I go join the IS Ramazan, if I can. They lived short, but they did big.
Razan would have graduated the School of Design today. I wanted to experience driving by the building and imagining what's going on there.
Razan was brutally murdered before the start of her second year. Had she lived, she would be graduating today with a Bachelor of Architecture degree. She had an intoxicating spark and a playful lightness that will continue to push us to move beyond the world we know, to play in the world we imagine.
One day we will reunite with them. Sometimes we see it in our dreams. And I feel that when I go to visit the grave, I feel that distance between me and them is just 6 feet. 6 feet. I cannot penetrate. We want our nation, our government, to learn something from it. At least that hate doesn't work and cannot be hidden. It will manifest. And the price is very dear and expensive.
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم